So, continuing on stories of this old Nova, I guess I want to talk a little bit more about the engine in it. Now, as far as Novas go, I like Novas okay. They're not like the pick car. I like the 68 Camaro's pretty good. I like the Corvette's pretty good. Those are my preferred cars. But the old Nova is just the one that came by, the one that I could afford or the right deal, and so that's what we went with. And we did have a very good time with this car. A lot of memories in this car. But for me, it wasn't necessarily the car that I was so interested in. It was what was underneath the hood, the engine. And so in the early 90s, and as I think it could have even been the late 80s, maybe 89 when I got this thing. But I didn't write it down. I don't have any kind of documentation to jog my memory, at least that I've run across. But anyways, back then, it was kind of like aftermarket cranks, aftermarket rods, aluminum heads, all that stuff at that time, especially for a young guy with a young family, for me anyways, it was just out of reach parts for me. And so really all I could do was, I call it fluff the parts that I had. The block I had, the rods I had, the crank I had. All I could do is work on those parts the best I could to improve on them. And so I think there's, at least in me anyways, there's something to that as far as the more work I put into an engine or a car, it's like the more maybe ownership I have, the more value it has to me. And so the first 400 was, I had the stock length 400 rod. It had actually cast flat top pistons, 441 heads that I ported, worked over, 202 valves, a hydraulic Blue Race cam, Victor Jr. intake, 650 double pumper that I had done a lot of work on the flow bench and stuff. And I think it was a Vegastal low gear in the back. I did say 456. I think I ended up 456, but I started out with a 430 gear in the car anyways. But anyways, over time, running in that configuration, when aluminum heads did come available, I think, it was the Edelbrock, maybe RPM heads that had come out, and they were kind of within reach. And so later on, I upgraded that motor as far as I upgraded the heads to those Edelbrock heads. The ignition that I had been running in the car was one of those old dual point XLs, and I upgraded the to MSD ignition. And in that configuration, I didn't do anything to Edelbrock heads. They were, right from Edelbrock, bolted them on, took the distributor out, and I put the whole MSD, 6AL, all that stuff on there. And those were the two major changes I had made to that engine. And I do think I changed out the pistons. I went to I think it was a Hypertech piston. So I went from just a regular cast factory piston, which didn't have much trouble out of those, and went to the Hypertech piston. And those were the changes I think I made the first time. And news for everybody, news flash, when we went to the track, it didn't go any faster. Not one drop. Apparently the heads that I had on there flowed good enough. Apparently the XL dual point was doing its job. If anything I can say I could notice the difference was it might have started a little bit quicker. It was easier just to fire up. But other than that, it ran basically the same times it ran with the cast iron heads and the older dual point. So sometimes parts upgrades that you think are gonna enhance something don't always pan out, and sometimes something that's massaged. I had spent a lot of time on those 441 heads working them and apparently had them working as good as a set of stock Edelbrock RPM heads at that time anyways. I thought the weight advantage would help out a little bit too. But anyways, that's how it seemed to work out, is for the money and expense that I went through, it didn't really seem to pick up the car any kind of a speed that was notable anyways. It looked good though. It looked good. But anyway, so that gets me back to like the engine and kind of like a human being, sounds strange, massaging something, putting effort into it, kind of making it his. And so really that engine in this car has a different engine in it now. It has I actually built this motor for an old Corvette I used to have. And I ended up, I can't even open the hood on this thing. Here I'm talking about how long I had it. I can't even open the hood. But anyways, this engine here, I specifically built it for a Corvette. I had an L82 4-speed Corvette, and I wanted a stronger engine in it. So this engine here is another engine, just like that 454 I'm building. I specifically built it for a Corvette. And it's a completely different type 400 than my first one, where I used, now this isn't no real, especially nowadays, it's not a high-end special motor. It's not. But back when it was built, it was, for me anyways, it was pretty decent little motor. But that first 400, I had mostly time in it, grinding away. And actually that 454 there that I'm building and we're kind of documenting a little bit on YouTube with you guys, it first started out with this block here. And this block here is the first one I started with. And I have a lot of time in this block here. And I'll show you the reason why I ended up not going with that block. But I just want to show you what time with a die grinder and some sanding discs you can do to enhance a motor, make it look a lot nicer, and actually have, I don't know the best way to put it, maybe some of your soul in it. You put your energy and your time and your skill. And I actually have the rods and everything that I was going to use in it, and the crank over here, and I'll show you that. And that's all stock stuff as well. So let me get these things unboxed and we'll look at it, because years ago, before I could afford a little bit better stuff, all I could do is massage the old stuff and upgrade it as best I could, because back then, at least with the budget I had, and most of my friends also, we just didn't have that kind of money to buy aftermarket rods, cranks, and all that stuff. All that stuff's become much easier to get. So let me get this thing unboxed and let's look her over. Okay, we got the plastic bag off of it, and as you can see, I made it a 4-bolt main, just like I did that other block. This is the first one I did, and also the stock cap, the stock 2-bolt main cap. I actually made it into a 4-bolt main cap. And I didn't do that to the other one, and I radiused all that. And then you can see now, this block's probably been sitting, I wouldn't doubt, a couple years bagged up. And so it's not real shiny. And what that is I guess you know what creosol is? Kind of keeps stuff from rusting. So it's not creosol, it's actually that chain wax that you can put on a motorcycle chain, and it kind of works the same way and keeps everything rusting. So if I ever had this thing cleaned up, it'd be really shiny. So you can see where I came in here and lowered the holes for help oil drain back, polished all that area. Oh, this thing's heavy. On the underside of it, you can see I got in there, polished all the areas really nice, radiused everything. Took a lot of time. I actually got a pretty nice comment when I sent it to a shop to have some work done to it. They were thought I had done a really nice prep job on it. Oh, and then the main body is completely polished all the way down, and then also the cylinders. I don't know if you can see it. I took a gasket, scribed out the cylinders, because you know the 454 bore isn't really that big these days, and so I chamfered the side. But yeah, put a lot of effort and time, chased all the threads, made it a 4-bolt main, and even had the lifter bores sleeved. And these cutouts here are for if you a roller cam, you know, if you have that. I can't say what they're called, but for a roller lifter. So anyways, what I was going for with this 454 is kind of like my first 400. I wanted to use basically a old 2-bolt main block. I wanted to, it has a nodular crank, it has a dog bone, I think they're called, rods, and I just wanted to detail everything as much as I could with what I had. And I don't know if anybody else has ever done that. Probably get some comments out of that. But anyway, that's 2-bolt main rear cap I made into a 4-bolt main. Anyways, I think it's really these 3 main caps that seem to take the worst abuse, seem to loosen up more than anything. But anyways, yeah, so that's the block that I prepped. And then over here, the rods. Now I didn't coat these, so here's the stock factory rods that were in it. And all beam polished out. Took as much weight off as I dared to. Balanced them. So anyways, so that's the block and the rods. And then for the rod bolts, I had bought the, now they're not 7/16, and so I bought the best 3/8, I think it is. I have to look at the package again. Yeah, wave lock, but I think these are 3/8 instead of the 7/16 bolt, and those were the rod bolts I was gonna put them and run. And I had to, yeah, I'm not running a Kylie's crank. I was going to run the nodular crank. Let me get this thing out and then we'll show that to you next. Alright, so that's the old factory nodular crank that came out of that block. Now, this 454, I was told, actually had come out of a motorhome. And it has the nodular crankshaft in it. And so I took it and I radiused, rounded all the corners, buffed it, you know, just spent time on it, working it over. And it also was a lot shinier at one time as well. It's sat for so long. Still in pretty good shape. I was kind of scared what it would look like when it come out of the bag. But on these truck 454s, like the motorhomes, and these real low RPM, chamfered the holes there, tuck on the casting flaws off, just spend some time on it, make it into a kind of a nice piece. So that was the first intention, is to run the nodular crankshaft cast crank, and then those beam polished rods with some good bolts, and a decent forged piston with some a good ring package, something to cut drag down. I was actually going to run a I was going to run a flat tappet cam in it, but then I had bought that solid roller cam that I ended up putting in this thing. But a lot of these truck blocks, at least the ones I've run across, their clearances and stuff are more sloppy. Kind of made some drain back holes and radius, everything, to try to get oil drained back as quick as I could. But the lifter bores on this thing, some of them you can see where they started like boring down into it, and then they stopped and shifted a little bit. So I ended up having the bronze sleeves put in it. And anyways, you know how it is, you put a lot of work in. And I did magnaflux this block before I started on it. But anyways, after I got it back from being sleeved, I saw a crack right there. And anyways, it's been repaired. You know, they silicone bronzed it, and we got a bushing in there. But anyways, this motor that I was building is kind of another one of those motors that is going to be my special motor. And I wanted it, I don't know, as perfect as I could get it. And that was kind of a deal breaker for me. Kind of, I don't know, it did. It hurt my feelings. I put that much effort in there, and you know, it's probably run fine, probably never caused a problem in the world. But that's kind of what made me step away from this block. Maybe I'll one day finish building it, put it in something else. I ain't sure. In fact, I'd kind of rather have this motor in that Nova, because it's more like the original motor. Because that original motor, where I had spent so much time on it, deburring it, radiusing, taking all the sharp edges off of everything, it's just a nicer piece. And I enjoyed that. Now, the motor that's in the car now, it's a small block 400, and I built it for a Corvette. So kind of the time I got rid of this Nova, that kind of pro street stuff, or not really pro street, but it's that pro touring, where, you know, you take a car and instead of being good at one thing, you make it where it handles pretty good, you make it where it stops pretty good, corners pretty good, and accelerates pretty good. It's kind of like a car that does everything instead of just, you know, one thing well. And that's why I had kind of bought that Corvette, because I thought, well, what car handles fairly good, already has okay brakes on it, and just needs a power plant change to make it into a car maybe that it deserves to be. Because some of those earlier Corvettes, you know, the one with big blocks and stuff in the early 68, 69, 70, 71, you know, they're dropping compression, but those earlier ones had some motors in them. And the chassis are basically the same. So I figured I could build a small block 400 around, you know, I never had it dynoed, so I have no idea. By the parts in it, you could say maybe 450 to 500 horsepower. I don't know, somewhere in there. I have no idea what it would make now, because like I say, that motor, she has been around. I don't think anybody's been into it, but it may have been into since it's been gone. I'm not sure myself. But anyways, this motor here is a bolt together engine. And what I mean by that, I might have spent a little time on a block, I don't remember. But the aftermarket crank, aftermarket rods, the heads are AFR. I don't remember if they're, it's been so long ago, they're the 195s, I don't know, I think they're 100% CNC ported. And back then is when also the, you know, the hydraulic roller cam was becoming sort of like a popular thing. I think they knew the zinc, they're going to take zinc out of oil, so I think everybody is scrambling for hydraulic roller motors. So this is my first hydraulic motor I built for myself, and it's a bolt together engine. I didn't port nothing, I didn't match the intake, I just bought a bunch of parts and I actually bolted it together. And so it doesn't have that time in it, and the compression is a little bit lower on it. The cam timing a little bit less, and then the dual plane intake. And in the Corvette, it moved on good. The Corvette handled this engine well, and it felt good in that Corvette. Now the 4-speed of the Corvette, the best I remember, it kind of had a tall first gear. Then the rest of the gears were kind of close together, to where this motor could have used, because it had a lot of torque, it could have used a bigger spread, more of a spread between the gears. The way that transmission was in the Corvette, it maybe a high RPM zingier motor would have been maybe better than the hydraulic roller. And the hydraulic roller in the early days, they don't rev, and this motor never did rev like that other 400 did. That other 400, especially by the time I got, I gave a guy a ride in the car. He offered me money. I pulled the engine out. He went home with it. And that's actually the first time after I pulled the motor out of this car. I didn't really have nothing. It was at the place where, it was going fast enough for me, but to make it go faster, it really needed to be safer. The whole car, in my opinion, kind of needed to be changed to get in the next, class of how fast you want it to be. And we had it for so long, I did everything I wanted to do with it, and that Pro Touring stuff was kind of interesting to me. So anyways, I went ahead and sold the car to another fella I know, and I bought the Corvette, and we built that motor and put it in the Corvette. I drove the Corvette around like that with the motor for a while, and ended up putting the original motor back in the Corvette and selling it. And then I don't even know the time frame, how long it was gone. But ended up, the guy I had sold it to, he was doing some kind of racing with it, street racing, whatever. And the motor was out of it, and I bought it back from him. And so I had that motor sitting around. I just went ahead and put it in the car like it was. Now, when I got it back, the first guy who I sold it to, he had put a power glide in it, trans brake, I guess the 2-step, and the converter in it, if I remember right, with that motor, I mean, if you put it up against the brake, you flash it to 5,000 RPM. So the motor, this motor is not a high RPM engine. It does good, and with that loose converter and that gear, I didn't know how well it would do, but wow, it ended up running 730s on motor, and it's a 9-to-1, in the 9s compression ratio. You can drive it anywhere, that style engine. And spraying it, for some reason, this motor here seemed to like nitrous a little bit better. Now, when I got it back, it had this MyersMetalWorks 300 shot on it. I think it's set for like 175, or I don't even know. Who knows what it's set on now. But anyways, with that system there, driving it to the track with exhaust up, street legal tires and everything, I could run some 660s with it. And man, that wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. So anyways, but this motor here was never the fun that first 400 was. Now, I don't know if the power glide took some of the fun away. I don't know if the lower RPM, but just something about this motor in this car when I got it back, even though it really was faster. The nitrous times was actually faster than I'd ever got it to go on nitrous. Now, on motor, that other motor, I got another transition I went through. I told you about the first transition. I went through another one that it ran a lot better after I did that one. But anyways, we'll get into that another time. But anyways, just wanted to show you. That's basically a bolt-together motor. Didn't spend much time on it at all. And the first one was a hand buffed, long hours of buffing and cleaning and fluffing, as I call it. And I had a lot of fun. That motor, even with the stock parts, It would rev to 7 grand. You know, if you didn't watch it, it would just rev like crazy. And I ran it for years and years. Didn't have a problem with it. Never heard anything from the guy who I had sold it to. So, anyways, just kind of showing you guys that, you know, if you got time, you don't have a lot of money, and I don't know, get your grinder out and go to grinding, and really makes a nice looking piece. All right, thanks for listening to this story, the old Nova, and let me know in the comments and stuff if you enjoy this, and we'll continue on with some more stories. Talk to you guys later.